Previously, we discussed attributes. Attributes are carried by objects. For example, I have a primitive cube here in the scene, and if that's selected, which it is in this case, I can go to the attribute editor and look at various attributes. For example, the first tab has transformation attributes like translate, rotate, and scale. Now, in reality, each one of these tabs is a separate node. A node is a construct that holds specific information. In other words, inside Maya, a node is a type of bucket, almost, that carries a set of attributes to define something. Now, it's a little abstract to look at nodes here in the attribute editor, so another way to look at the nodes is to go into the hypergraph or the outliner windows. So I'll close this for now. And we'll start with the hypergraph. If you go up to the window menu and go down the hypergraph hierarchy, you'll bring up the hypergraph in the hierarchy mode. So I'll click on that, and the window pops up. Now, this is a separate window. You can drag this window wherever you want. You can also resize it by going down to the bottom left, clicking and dragging. So here we have a little yellow box inside the hypergraph window. This is actually a node, or a representation of a node, and this is called pcube1. This is the same thing we saw in the attribute editor as the first tab. So this is a node. It's actually a transform node. In fact, the hierarchy mode of the hypergraph shows you transform nodes. And transform nodes are the ones that carry the transformation information, such as translate, rotate, and scale. And this node is yellow right now because it's selected. And in fact, the cube remains selected. If I deselect the cube, you'll see that the node inside the hypergraph is no longer yellow. So you can select either in the viewport by clicking on the object or selecting inside the hypergraph itself. I can click right on that node square. Now, if you have more than one object, you'll see more than one node and more than one node square inside the hypergraph. So if I go ahead and create a few more primitives, I'll go up to Create, and we'll try some polygon primitives. I'll create a sphere, click Drag, and maybe I'll create another polygon primitive, maybe a plane, and click Drag. You'll see that I have 3 objects. I also have 3 nodes in the hypergraph. Now, if your view is not complete in the hypergraph, you can use your camera keys to move around. For instance, Alt, middle mouse button inside the hypergraph allows you to scroll. You can also dolly by doing Alt, right mouse key. So there are 3 nodes that correspond to the 3 objects. And you can click either in the hypergraph or in the viewport to select or deselect. For instance, I can go into the hypergraph and click on the P-sphere to select the sphere. So that's a hypergraph. It's a brief introduction. We'll return to this later on. Now we'll go to the outliner. So I'll close this window by hitting the Close button. We'll go up to the window menu and go down to Outliner. That'll bring up the outliner window, which is a separate window. You can also resize this window and place it where you want. This also shows nodes, but in a slightly different format. It's called the outliner because it shows you a bit of an outline. So once again, I have 3 nodes for my 3 objects. There's the p-cube, the p-sphere, and the p-plane. And by the way, those are default names that Maya assigns. You'll also see the name for those objects up at the top of the channel box. There are also additional nodes inside the outliner. For example, you have a node for each camera: perspective, top, front, and side. Perspective is a perspective camera, and of course, top, front, and side are orthographic cameras. You also have a couple nodes that are universal nodes that Maya provides in order to make the rendering and lighting and so on function. You don't use these nodes directly, but they're there. For instance, default light set and default object set are provided by the program. But most of the time, you'll be manipulating cameras and/or objects, like this cube. So we'll return to the outliner and the hypergraph once we start working with groups and start working with animation. For now, I'll go ahead and close this window.